Can you tell me about your beliefs regarding the EMS system and patient care here in Barbados as it relates to legislation and regulation?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Tell me about your beliefs regarding EMS, the EMS system and patient care in Barbados as it relates to legislation and regulation.
I'm not quite sure of the exact legislations and regulations that govern the system, but certainly from liaising and working within the system, I recognize that the EMS, they obviously try their utmost to do the best they can in preserving life and limb and trying to have the best outcomes for the patients. So as I said, I don't know the exact legislations and regulations that govern how they operate, but certainly over the years and working within the system, I have seen it come from a truly almost like scoop and run system where people just go out there and collect a person, just deposit them to you, to a system now where we have trained emergency medical technicians / paramedics, where a lot of stabilization is even done in the field, and the people are coming to you really well packaged and really ready almost for you to do further care with really great communication, basically from the field to the emergency room. So I've seen really over the years, I would say it's over like 20 years. I've seen really massive strides in the way they have managed and how they treat patients now.
Okay. In spite of your not being knowledgeable about the specific legislation and regulations for EMS providers, do you believe, however, that legislation and regulation are important to the success of pre-hospital service delivery, patient care, and outcome?
Most definitely.
Most definitely. And are you able to provide an example where you think that legislation and you believe that legislation and regulation impacted or could impact patient care or even outcome?
This may not answer, I'm not quite sure, but again, I think legislation in terms of one, our like seatbelt laws, I think we should need to be a lot more rigorous in those, and maybe not that the laws aren't there, but implementation. So certainly I think that will reduce morbidity and mortality. And on the second side of that would be I guess in a more American way, would be patient under the influence of a narcotic or some sort of alcohol, where you don't really have any laws with respect to alcohol. So at legislative, anything, we need to have more laws with respect to alcohol, blood alcohol concentration levels, where we can have less incidents based on people driving in an impaired way. I think that's where legislation would be important for us in sort of decreasing the likelihood of there being more accidents and really putting greater strain on our systems.
Right.
So I can see legislation being important in that way.
Okay. So what are some things you think that influence how doctors and nurses or even EMS providers feel about EMS?
Again, I think a lot of what we get is born out of maybe more ignorance of the system and not really knowing more or not knowing enough about it. So I have found when I started my emergency medicine career, we had to do something at that time was called pre-hospital trauma life support, which is I guess back in the olden times. So I mean that sort of you were side by side with your colleagues in the field, and first of all, you built up maybe a bit of a camaraderie with them because sitting in the classroom and working together. And then you did scenarios where you had accidents or you had to extricate people. You kind of worked again as a team, sort of that collaborative approach. And again, always trying to work for the better outcome of the patient. And again, that gave us more of an insight of maybe what they do, and they also got a better insight of what we do. And again, I think that sort of synergy between the two systems was really a fantastic one, because I would say many times you're in the emergency room and the ambulance people come through and you honestly say, oh man, the ambulance people, what are they bringing now? So it's almost, the emergency room is almost always overwhelmed, and when you see the emergency ambulance, ambulance, people coming in again, you're saying, oh man, another case. I wish that we had more resources to deal with, But of course, the emergency ambulance service has no say on what comes through the door and when. They go to collect the patients and they bring them for further care, And even sometimes within our department, sometimes you can see a little bit, sometimes I think tension between the nurses who receive the patients and the emergency ambulance because of just overload with respect to work, Many times too in our department, we have patients that are on trolleys from the ambulance service that can't go to bed because there are no beds available. There are times when the ambulance can't go for patients because they're all in the emergency room on their trolleys because there are no beds. And the ambulance service has no trolleys at all. There are 8 trolleys in the emergency room with patients on them that can't move, that are stuck. So sometimes I guess there's always that little, almost sometimes friction. The other time I see a little bit of problems is when the ambulance crew come in with a patient and the nurses are busy. And then the ambulance crew are almost waiting, I would say sometimes inordinate lengths of time for someone to take over the patient because the nurse is busy. Sometimes the doctors will step up and come and say, well, what do you have? But a lot of the times the doctors too are busy.
Yeah. So
sometimes I find, as I said, that sort of interaction between us sometimes isn't as smooth as it should be. But as I said, I'm just kind of going through the full gamut of
that's good. That's fine.
From when it works well and sometimes when it doesn't work so well.
So would you, in terms of if there was legislation or your knowledge, if you were more knowledgeable about legislation and regulation, do you think that you're feeling, what do you feel, how would you characterize your feelings about legislation and regulation as it relates to pre-hospital emergency services? Negative, indifferent, or positive?
Definitely positive, because I think, as I kind of alluded to before, I think both the legislations or the regulations kind of give you the framework within which to work. So you know your parameters, you know what you're most supposed to do or not do. I think it just helps us streamline the system a whole lot better. So because you're being governed by certain rules.
That's right. Yeah. Regarding behaviors, in terms of legislation and regulation, again, influencing behaviors, whether your behavior or whether behaviors of nurses or even behaviors of the pre-hospital providers, how do you think that legislation and regulation could influence or is influencing those behaviors?
Again, I would say similar answer to before. I think it would again be positive because again, if you know the parameters of which you're working or maybe what you should do or shouldn't do or can or can't do, it will just help you to almost toe the line kind of thing.
Understood.
For lack of a better word.
Yeah. So let's move on to some questions about medical direction. And medical direction refers to each Caribbean country having a qualified EMS medical director who oversees the country's EMS system and provides guidance for the pre-hospital providers. It refers sometimes to appointment of an EMS medical director for a Caribbean country. And it often requires involvement in clinical care, EMS system design, scope of practice, credentialing, population-based care, the well-being of the providers, and certainly encouraging and initiating research. What are your beliefs about medical direction for pre-hospital EMS providers here in Barbados?
Again, I think it's fantastic. I think it's something that has to be done. And again, looking at our example, again, because of my age, I was in the same year as Dr. Byron. And again, there's to me such a major improvement when you compare when he wasn't there as medical director to now that he is there. In terms of the advancements in care, they started out with the emergency med. Before they were all ambulance drivers. As I said, they just went to the scene, collected patients and brought them to the hospital. Since he came, that's when we started the emergency medical technician program. That's when we started training the paramedics. And that all came through the emergency room. We were the actual ones that went out there in the beginning and trained these guys in their physiology and, all hands on, brought them into the departments, trained them in terms of putting up intravenous lines, giving patients supplemental oxygen. And then again, as you said, with him then on board, he was able to sort of, look at the system, see its deficiencies, could identify where it was weak, put things in place to improve that, did a lot of quality control.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, over the years, you've seen the system just get progressively better and better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having the medical director there has really taken us from, I would say, 19th century into certainly into the 21st.
So you've covered a gamut. You went from beliefs to behaviors. So in terms of categorizing your feelings as negative, positive, or indifferent as it relates to medical direction, can you give me that answer again? Most definitely. Yeah. Any particular scenarios you can think about that medical direction where these feelings that you have, any particular situation where these feelings that you have actually came about?
Specific things.
A scenario or patient or anything like that?
I mean, I think I would say when we initially we didn't have nitrous oxide for patient in-field analgesia, and he was really instrumental in starting that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that would be one that would really come to mind. And obviously, analgesia is so important.
Mm-hmm.
As I always tell people, patients never come to see the doctor because maybe what's wrong with them.
Mm-hmm.
They come because of pain.
What's hurting?
Yeah. I just want to get this over.
Yeah. Describe your thoughts about the things that influence the behaviors of A&E doctors or even nurses or ambulance workers in Barbados in terms of medical direction. How does medical direction possibly, based on your opinion, what are the things how does it influence the behaviors of the pre-hospital providers or even yourself or the nurses?
Well, I would say you always want to do the best for the patient. Mm-hmm. So I say that you truly go sometimes above and beyond calling a duty to do and provide the best care for your patient. And I think that happens at all levels of our system. I think we are cash strapped, we're a third world country, we're lesser developed, we don't always have the resources, but we always cut and contrive to try to do the best that we have.
Okay. So in terms of positive influences to behaviors, you talked about pain management as one such thing. How about negative influence of behaviors and medical direction?
I would say maybe the one area where you think may be negative is maybe because you then do have rules and regulations, things that people may have done before as something to help a patient, or maybe they would have done it if they weren't given a different direction. They may be less likely to do it because they have certain rules governing them. And we can maybe even use what we said or I discussed or we were discussing earlier about the patient with tension pneumothorax in the field. If you have a tension pneumothorax in the field and your ETA is 20 minutes, then I'm sure that patient is going to die. If you have medical rules and regulations that state that you can't put you can't do something definitive in the field, then that patient is lost. While if you were in a scenario or framework before where you didn't have a rule or regulation that said I couldn't put in a needle to decompress, then someone in the field may actually try it. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's
the guidance that medical direction
provides. Yeah, we did a lecture on this and you just put a needle in here, all the other signs and symptoms are there. I would almost say to you, can you really truly almost make that patient worse? I mean, if you say truly had a patient with tension pneumothorax and you had to do a needle decompression, and the likelihood that you could decompress and make him worse is very slim. But if your ETA is 20 minutes and you have a tension pneumothorax, the probability that he makes it and lives is very, very low.
So in closing, how long have you been in the profession, you said?
I first came to the emergency room in 1996. Then I got my specialist qualifications in emergency medicine in 2003. So post-grad 15 years, but in the emergency room for 22 years.
Well, we've covered, and I can tell you like what you do. We've covered everything I plan to cover, and I don't have anything else, unless you have anything that you'd like to add.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I appreciate you taking the time, and I know you have a schedule, and you took time out to meet with me and stuff, and I really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And